Propellant loading has started.
And so it begins. The loading of propellant aboard the Falcon 9 rocket, liquid oxygen and RP-1. Got your propellant and your oxidizer, which blended together make quite the combustion. Millions of pounds of thrust to get Crew 5 into space.
You know, there are a lot of details to that operation, Daryl, with each of the stages, and as you mentioned, the oxidizer and the fuel both needing to be loaded, and so the crew will follow along with that carefully as the loading operation commences. If there was any reason for them to need to stop that operation, the crew would expect that propellant loading to kind of be backed out and reversed, and so they'll want to understand the state of that fueling operation going forward, just in case they had to back out of it.
And we've got a social question now from @Grant B117, who asks, how long does it take to complete the fueling operations?
No, it's a great question, Daryl, and they started it at 35 minutes because that's really prior to liftoff, because that's how long it takes for the loading operations to kind of get executed. The crew goes through the process, the ground team, of loading that propellant, ensuring that they get the proper commodities on board. The actual sequencing of things might be affected a little bit by the temperature on a given day, but they have that process well monitored, and they begin at 35 minutes because that's how long it takes to get the rocket all fueled up.
Thank you for answering those questions, and to you out there for asking the questions. Keep them coming. #AskNASA on our various social platforms. And again, now that fueling for Falcon 9 has started, that means the 8 Super Draco engines inside Crew Dragon are ready, if needed, to launch the capsule away from Falcon 9 in an instant, should there be any kind of emergency associated with the rocket or the pad. The NASA and SpaceX teams have trained extensively for exactly that type of contingency. And so now let's go over to Kate Tice at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne for another operations update. Kate?
Thanks, Daryl. You can probably tell by the background noise that things are starting to get more exciting now that we're just practically 30 minutes away from launch of Crew 5, certainly counting down the final minutes. Everything's still looking good for Falcon 9 and Dragon. With that launch escape system now armed, we are heading for an on-time launch just 32 minutes from now. As you saw, Falcon 9 propellant load began right on time at T-minus 35 minutes. The first and second stages of Falcon 9 are each loaded with 2 liquid propellants. One is fuel, which is loaded into a tank at the bottom of each stage, and the other is an oxidizer, and that's loaded into a tank at the top of each stage. The fuel that we use to power the Merlin engines is a refined kerosene referred to as RP-1, or Rocket Propellant 1. The oxidizer loaded on each stage is a densified liquid oxygen, or LOX. Densified means that it's kept much colder than typical for launch vehicles, and it takes up less volume. And as such, this allows for more oxidizer to be loaded into the first and second stages. Now, to ignite the fuel and oxidizer in the Merlin rocket engine, we use an ignition fluid called TTEB. When TTEB comes into contact with oxygen, it burns, giving off a green-colored flame. Once we have that flame going, we add in the kerosene fuel to the Merlin chamber, and the engine ramps up to full power. You might actually be able to see that green flash just as the second stage engine ignites following stage separation, which is expected to happen about 2 minutes and 48 seconds into flight. Right now, we're topping off helium into pressure vessels on both stages. This is used to pressurize tanks in flight as propellant is pulled out of those tanks by the Merlin turbo pumps. Now, on board the spacecraft, the astronauts are monitoring systems from their crew monitors.
Stage 1 cryo-helium loading has started.
All right, there we just heard that the cryo-helium load has begun. Again, that is going into those pressure vessels that I mentioned earlier. Now, the crew training simulator has included playback of the sounds that were recorded in a previous Dragon capsule during recent flights. So all of the pops and the hisses that the vehicle puts out, all the crew has heard those before, though not live. So they are prepared for all the noises, the extra noises that they're now hearing. As for the range, continues to report no problems. They are go to support launch. Weather also clearly looking.
Good morning, Chantal.
Even fewer clouds than we were about 20 minutes ago. We had a less than 10% chance or probability of violation of our weather constraints, also known as a PO.
And good morning to Carmen.
That's really good. That is for the launch site conditions. We are also tracking downrange weather conditions as well as launch sites around the world in the unlikely event that Dragon needs to escape. Now, as a reminder, today we have an instantaneous launch time because we're heading to the International Space Station. So at this point in time, if we hear a hold for any reason, we will have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity, which is tomorrow, just under 24 hours from today's planned launch. At this point in time, at just under T-minus 30 minutes till launch, let's turn it back over to Jesse and Sandra for an overview of what's to come until liftoff.
Great. Thanks, Kate. Always great to hear that we've got good weather and it looks beautiful over there at KSC. For Crew 5, the astronauts' flight to station will take about 29 hours.
And as we await T0 in just about 28 minutes from now, the ground operations team is doing a series of system checks to make sure both Dragon and Falcon 9 are ready for launch. You're looking at a live view of our teams at the Cape as they prepare for liftoff. And as we wait for the launch clock to hit 0, we want to give you an overview of what the ascent portion of the mission will look like.
Now, once we hit T0 and a successful launch occurs, we will watch Falcon 9 and Dragon lift off from historic launch pad 39A and make their ascent.
About 50 seconds into flight, Falcon's 9 engines will throttle down to help pass through the period of a maximum dynamic pressure on the rocket, or what we typically refer to as max Q. At this point in time, the vehicle will be going supersonic.
And once we're through the period of maximum dynamic pressure, we can throttle up our 9 Merlin engines again. From there, at about 2.5 minutes into flight, we have a series of 3 events that will happen in rapid succession.
The first is MECO, or main engine cutoff, and this is where all 9 Merlin 1D engines shut off in preparation for stage separation, which is, of course, our second event. This is where the first stage detaches from the second stage, and the first stage will make its way back to Earth for landing, while the second stage continues on its journey with the third event, which is SES-1, or second stage engine start number 1, and this is where the MVAC engine lights up and propels the second stage along with our Crew 5 astronauts to orbit.
As Stage 2 heads towards its targeted drop-off orbit, Stage 1 will execute 2 burns in order to make its way back down to Earth. The first is the entry burn, and that's where 3 of the 9 M1D engines will reignite and shut down. And this helps to slow the stage down in preparation for entry back into the Earth's atmosphere.
While the first stage is heading back to Earth, the second stage will cut off its 1 Merlin engine that was ignited right after stage separation. Once this happens, we will wait for confirmation of a good orbital insertion.
About 90 seconds after Dragon gets into orbit, Falcon 9 will land back on Earth. The landing burn is just a single engine burn, powerful enough to bring the vehicle's speed down rapidly in order to touch down on the drone ship at about 9.5 minutes into the mission.
While Falcon 9's first stage is landing, Dragon is preparing to separate from the second stage. About 3 minutes after the second stage gets into orbit, we should have a great view of Dragon with its 4-person crew drifting away from the second stage. Once Dragon is a short distance away, it will begin checking out its Draco maneuvering thrusters to make sure Dragon continues to increase separation distance from the second stage. And it is worth noting that these are not the Super Draco engines that would be used during an abort scenario.
About 40 seconds after separation, Dragon's nose cone deploy sequence will begin. It will take roughly 4 minutes for the nose cone hooks to unlatch and open, exposing its guidance navigation controls that will help Dragon autonomously fly to the space station.
And lastly, once the nose cone is deployed, the remaining Draco thrusters on the forward bulkhead will be checked. From there, over the next...
Stage 2 cryo-helium loading has started.
From there, over the next 29 hours, Dragon will be in its rendezvous and approach phases, undergoing a number of phasing burns as it makes its way back to station. All that will be coming up soon, but for now, let's check back in with Shaniqua in Mission Control Houston. Shaniqua?
Thanks, Sandra.
I just want to say good morning to everybody. Hope you had a great morning so far, and looking forward to this launch with the crew heading to the ISS. So this always makes me a little nervous when I know there's astronauts on board. I think it makes a lot of people nervous based on the history. For some of us that are older, with the shuttle, horrible disasters that happen. But yeah, this should be a great day, and hopefully everything will be successful, and Godspeed to these astronauts heading to the ISS.
Docking. And once aboard, the astronauts will be greeted by Station Commander Samantha Cristoforetti, and then the whole station crew will join in for welcoming remarks to the new crew members. Now, due to critical science, this welcoming remarks will be about 90 minutes after the crew is on board. Once on board, the crew members will no longer be referred to as Crew 5, but rather as flight engineers of the International Space Station. Here in Mission Control, Flight Director Greg Whitney is on console overseeing the team for launch, and he will be back tomorrow for docking. We'll be on air continuously through Crew 5's arrival, but live coverage of docking is expected tomorrow around 4:57 p.m. Eastern Time. That's it from now. From Mission Control Houston, I'll toss it back to the team in Florida. Daryl, how's it looking?
Well, it's wonderful out here, Shaniqua. Wish you could be here. We got picnic weather out here at the press site and Launch Complex 39, where we are looking out for the launch of Crew 5 from historic Launch Complex 39A, a beautiful sweeping shot of the lawn where we have our special guests. The media are here. We've got NASA social folks who are out on the lawn, and of course, me and Bob. Bob's riding shotgun here as we take our coverage to the next level at the final 23 minutes of liftoff. Now, from the countdown, rather. We are just seconds away from the 5th astronaut rotation mission to the International Space Station under NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Commander Nicole Mann, pilot Josh Cassada, and mission specialist Koichi Wakata and Anna Kikina are strapped into their seats inside the Dragon Endurance at the very top of this rocket here. We are listening in to the communications as they talk live to the Falcon 9 team. The rocket is fueling. The operation is doing well. And the launch escape system is armed. Of course, that means Dragon is prepared to launch itself away from the Falcon 9 rocket in case of an emergency on the pad or after liftoff. So far, operations looking and sounding as expected. And we are counting down to our liftoff at just after noon, 12 p.m. and 57 seconds after the hour Eastern time. There was a 1-second adjustment. That's pretty typical, as happens when we get to this stage of the mission. The mission is the continuation of rotational crew flights to the International Space Station from U.S. soil on private rockets and spacecraft. Of course, this would not have been possible without the success of the NASA SpaceX Demo 2 test flight now 2 years ago, and of course the safe delivery and return of crews 1, 2, 3, and eventually here in about a week, Crew 4. Of course, we're happy to have the pilot from Demo 2, and that's Bob Binken. Appreciate you being here, been giving us some great thoughts and explanations about everything that's been happening.
Well, thank you, Daryl. I'm super excited to be here for Crew 5 and get a chance to relive my experience during the Demo 2 mission.
And it's been a great one so far. We've watched the crew get into the capsule. We've watched, they worked through a couple of issues early on, but those have been cleared. A suit leak check and a hatch leak check that had to be double checked. Now we're rolling along and moving towards liftoff. A couple things that are coming up as we count down. We're going to have stage 2 RP1 load complete. That's in 20 seconds. A few seconds later, we'll get strong back chill. That will begin in order to set the stage for the stage 2 liquid oxygen load.
Just want to say good morning to everybody watching on Rumble, Trovo, Twitch, and YouTube. As you can see, the countdown is at T-minus 20 approximately. So good morning to everyone. Good morning, Al. So let's get back.
Let's talk a little bit.
Also, I'm wearing my Space Force jacket that I created. This is my own I made it myself jacket.
She holds a Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering and is a colonel in the Marine Corps. She was an FA-18 Hornet and Super Hornet test pilot and deployed twice aboard aircraft carriers in support of combat operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. Nicole was selected by NASA in June of 2013, and in the years that followed, led the astronaut corps in the development of hardware for our Artemis program. Today, the Crew 5 commander will be flying into space for the first time, and once she reaches space, she will be the first Native American woman to stay on station. A historic first for NASA and for her.
Absolutely, Daryl. The astronaut corps is widely diverse, and I'm just proud to see Nicole join that crew on board the International Space Station.
With her is pilot Josh Cassada. He grew up in Bear Lake, Minnesota. The physicist and U.S. Navy test pilot flew the P-3C and the P-8A, as well as 23 combat missions. He later became an instructor at the U.S. Naval Test Pilot School, which is a path to NASA for military officers. Cassada is one of more than 100 graduates who have become astronauts, going all the way back to the Mercury program. More recently, he served as capsule communicator in mission control, but today he is the pilot aboard Dragon.
It's a seat I know well, and I look forward to seeing Josh support Nicole and the rest of the crew on their way towards the International Space Station.
The mission specialist now, Koichi Wakata, he's the veteran, a Japanese astronaut who has a doctorate in aerospace engineering. In 1996, he became the first Japanese mission specialist aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour for STS-72. Altogether, Koichi flew 4 Space Shuttle missions, a Roscosmos Soyuz, and was on a long-duration stay aboard the International Space Station. During his 2-decade career as an astronaut, Koichi has spent 11 months in space. Bob, you spent a fair amount of time in space yourself. It's great to have a veteran aboard.
It absolutely is, and in addition to being a veteran, Koichi just has a wonderful personality that I know is just it's key to kind of success on board the space station.
Our second mission specialist is Roscosmos cosmonaut Anna Kikina. She graduated from the Novosibirsk State Academy of Water Transport in 2006. In 2012, Anna officially became a candidate for the position of test cosmonaut. Crew 5 will be Anna's first flight into space, along with 2 of her other fellow astronauts. Now, each of these 4 crew members will be part of Expedition 68 once they arrive at the International Space Station. And there you see them there inside Crew Dragon Endurance, the second flight for this Dragon. I want to let you know, if you're here locally, you want to step outside and enjoy the launch, you got a small radio, you can pick us up on VHF radio frequency 146.940 on the megahertz scale, and on UHF radio frequency 444.925 megahertz FM mode. You can hear that all within Brevard County, right here on the beautiful Space Coast. And you can see the
Stage 2 LOX load has started.
Just got the call out that the Stage 2 LOX load has started, putting that liquid propellant into the second stage. Let's check back in with Kate Tice and get an update from Hawthorne. Kate?
Thanks, Daryl. We are T-minus 16 minutes away from launch, and everything continues to look great for Falcon 9 and Dragon. Falcon 9 began prop load at T-minus 35 minutes. The loading of RP-1 fuel on the second stage is complete. That finished at T-minus 20 minutes. Fuel loading continues on the first.
Good morning to Andy and good morning to Ben.
Almost complete. That should be wrapping up here momentarily. Densified liquid oxygen loading is underway on both the first and second stages. Those look to be about 80% on the first stage and has only just recently begun on the second stage. So not much there yet. That will wrap up at T-minus 3 minutes and T-minus 2 minutes respectively. Now, as for checkouts of thrust vector controllers, what we call TVC wiggles, those are coming up. We basically check to make sure that the thrust vector controllers are able to actuate the engines themselves. That's what helps create gimbal for those engines, and gimbaling is actually how Falcon 9 steers itself. So those are coming up along with throttle valve checkouts on the engines. The Dragon mission director and team are currently reporting no issues, so really good on that front. Communication checkouts are complete. The crew access arm is retracted, as we can see there, and the crew is strapped in and ready to go, as you can see there on the right-hand side of your screen. Everybody continuing to monitor prop load there on their crew monitors. Now, final instructions to the crew come at T-minus 10 minutes. At that point, their crew displays will be configured for launch. This setup gives the crew insight into how the launch is proceeding and provides constant updates on vehicle health. At T-minus 5 minutes, we'll hear the call out that will be in terminal count, and at that point, Dragon will transition to internal power. We'll hear continued call outs on the countdown nets as we get closer to liftoff. As for range, they continue to be go, continuing to monitor the launch corridor, and everything remains green. As for weather, we're looking at 7-mile-per-hour winds at the launch site. And as I said before, as the countdown continues, we are seeing fewer and fewer clouds. Just an absolutely stunning day there at Kennedy Space Center. Let's check back in with Daryl to see the last couple minutes prior to liftoff.
Thanks, Kate, and it really couldn't be more perfect out here weather-wise for a launch. How about that, Bob?
It just looks absolutely stunning to look out and see the vehicle ready to go, the crew on board, strapped in. I'm just super excited for them.
And there's a view of the countdown clock and the historic American flag that has been standing there since the Space Shuttle program. Now you're looking at a pic of Crew 5. Crew 5 flying aboard the Dragon capsule Endurance, and the booster that you see behind them that they're posing with is a brand new one. Actually was damaged in transit from California to Texas, but it was fixed, repaired. The crew did a great job, the SpaceX team, in getting it all ready. And at the time that Falcon 9 launches Dragon to space, the International Space Station will be 260 statute miles over Australia. Crew 5 will then spend the next 21 hours with Mission Control Team that you see there in Houston, standing by, getting ready for the beginning of this mission. They'll spend 29 hours chasing down the International Space Station for a rendezvous at 4:57 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow evening. One of the longer transits, Bob.
It's true. It's a little bit longer than usual, or average, I would say, as we work towards Crew 5. But as the launch dates shift around, that changes the time that you can actually arrive on Space Station. They've got plenty of consumables, so it should be fun to have some time in space.
And when they arrive tomorrow evening, we'll have live coverage on NASA TV of docking, as well as the Crew 5 welcome ceremony at 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:15 p.m. Central. And some final thoughts, Bob, as we get ready to watch Crew 5 launch into space.
You know, my opportunity to sit here and watch Crew 5 go has just been inspiring again to see another vehicle head towards the International Space Station. Again, I'm excited for them and just hopeful that Nicole, Josh, Koichi, and Anna have just a wonderful mission. I know that they've got a wonderful launch in front of them.
Absolutely, and that's what we're rooting for here. And so with T-minus 11 minutes and counting, we're going to spin our chairs around and watch the launch. But we're going to let Kate and the team focus on the pad as we proceed through the final stretch of the countdown. We'll turn it over to Kate Tice at SpaceX headquarters in California to take us through. Take it away, Kate.
Thanks, Daryl. As you can probably tell by the background noise, the crowd is definitely growing here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Certainly one of our company traditions is to watch the launch itself from behind Mission Control, which you see there on your screen. You can see this is Mission Control Hawthorne, or as you sometimes hear referred to as MCCX. And then, of course, a crowd of employees watching from behind. I personally also stand there if I'm not doing the webcast, so I can confirm it's a great spot to watch launch. Like I said, as you can see, the energy is certainly starting to grow now that we're about to hit T-minus 10 minutes. Beautiful view there of Falcon 9 and Dragon on the pad, ready to take Crew 5 to space.
We did discuss
Dragon, SpaceX, confirm crew displays are configured for launch.
Loco, we would like to give a huge thanks to the NASA and SpaceX team, the thousands of people for their development, preparation, and training in getting Endurance and Crew 5 to the launch pad today, and your continued support in helping to make this a successful mission. We look forward to joining the rest of our Expedition 68 crew members aboard the International Space Station. And a special thanks on behalf of all the crew to our family and friends. It is your love and support that help make dreams come true. Now let's do this. Crew 5 displays are configured for launch.
Copy. And Nicole, Josh, Koichi, and Anna, on behalf of the entire team at SpaceX, good luck, Godspeed, and enjoy the ride.
And those words from Nicole Mann, the first female commander of a Dragon, as she thanked the many folks that have helped get them to this point. We're now less than 9 minutes away from launch today. Upon liftoff, you'll hear a number and letter combinations which mark different abort zones throughout the flight, as well as some performance calls. The first two are 1A and 1B, and those signify the first stage and will last up to the very north tip of North Carolina. The next are 2A through 2E, and those will come into play once the second stage kicks in, lasting from the top of North Carolina all the way to the tip of Newfoundland in the northern Atlantic. You'll also hear a spot that is to be avoided, and you might hear Shannon or forward to Shannon, and that actually refers to Shannon, Ireland, meaning they would target off the east coast of Ireland if they were later in that second stage and did need to abort for some reason. So the next major milestone that we're looking towards will come just seconds from now, and that will be when engine chill begins on the first stage of the engine.
That's right. So engine chill is basically when we take a little bit of that super chilled densified liquid oxygen and we flow it through the turbopumps of the Merlin M1D engines on the first stage. This helps to prepare the turbopumps and avoid any thermal shock to the hardware when they see the full flow of liquid oxygen during ignition. We're also expecting the conclusion of prop load for the RP1 on first stage to wrap up at T-minus 6 minutes. LOX load continues to be underway on both first and second stages, again wrapping those at T-minus 3 minutes and 2 minutes.
And after that, we'll hear a number of call-outs related to Dragon's flight computer. Some will be
Stage 1 engine chill has started.
And you did just hear that call out that stage 1 engine chill has begun. Coming up in just about 45 seconds, we should expect to hear that RP1 load is complete. RP1 load is that densified kerosene or rocket fuel that will help propel the crew into orbit. All of that RP1 is loaded into the first stage, and we are standing by to hear that it was loaded into the second stage as well.
Again, we expect that to wrap at T-minus 6 minutes. The venting that you see on screen is totally normal. That is just some
Stage 1 RP1 load is complete.
Great news there that RP1 load is now finished. As I was saying, the venting that you see on the vehicle is totally normal. That's just some of the super chilled densified liquid oxygen just vaporizing as it comes into contact and vents from the vehicle.
And coming up, we'll also hear the call for Dragon to configure for terminal count, and then it will be transferred over to internal power, and then we'll hear that propellant tanks on Falcon 9 are getting ready to pressurize, which helps add some additional rigidity and structural support as we get ready for strong back retract.
That strong back will retract a couple of degrees at first, and then we will see it swing open completely just shortly or at the moment of
Falcon 9
liftoff.
tanks will be pressurizing for strong back retract.
Right, there's that indication that we are preparing for that strong back retraction.
Coming up in just a few seconds, we should hear that Dragon is in terminal count.
Dragon is in configure for terminal count.
All right, there we heard that call. Dragon onboard computers have now taken control of the
Good morning, Amanda. Or actually, should I say good afternoon, Amanda?
liquid oxygen loading is underway and will wrap up at T-minus 3 minutes. And the second stage will wrap its LOX load at T-minus 2 minutes. Launch teams continue to report no issues, and everything remains green and for an on-time launch.
Retract has started.
And here in just a couple seconds, you might be able to see the strong back arm as it does begin to retract. As Kate said, it will recline 2 degrees.
We can just barely make out the clamp arms are now beginning to move. All right, now that those clamp arms are removed, as Sandra said, this will retract by 2 degrees, and then at liftoff, the strong back will retract another to 45 degrees, allowing Falcon 9 to clear. Strong back is part of the transporter erector, and the transporter erector is what provides the liquids, the gases, the electrical connections to the vehicle. It's also what we use to integrate the vehicle in its horizontal position, and we can see that 2 degree retraction just now complete.
And the next call out that we should hear in about 20 seconds is that the first stage LOX load is complete.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
And there we go, all of the oxidizer loaded on stage 1. Soon we'll hear that stage 2 LOX load is complete, and that will be the last propellant call out we'll hear today. Now less than 3 minutes until launch.
Dragon is in terminal count and is on internal power.
All right, there we heard the good news that Dragon is now on internal power. Again, the white clouds that you see there at the base of the Dragon trunk, totally normal. That's just the vapor from the liquid oxygen. Again, second stage now wrapping up its LOX load. Excuse me, first stage wrapping up its LOX load just a few minutes ago, and now moving toward wrap up of second stage LOX load, which will complete at T-minus 2 minutes.
Coming up on 2 minutes until liftoff, standing by for word that stage 2 LOX load has been completed.
Dragon is in auto idle. Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
There we heard the call out. Falcon 9 is now completely fueled. All of its propellants, so
Closeouts are starting. Expect loud ending.
all of its propellants, and we can see that leftover liquid oxygen now being vented or released, now flowing further away from the vehicle. So nearly 1 million pounds of liquid oxygen in RP1 now on board Falcon 9. It is fully loaded and ready for launch.
And coming up at T-minus 1 minute, we'll hear that Dragon is in countdown. Its flight computer will switch to countdown mode, and we'll hear that the flight termination system on Falcon 9 is armed.
STS is armed. Falcon 9 is in startup and is now controlling.
And there you heard it.
Dragon is in countdown.
Dragon's flight computer in countdown. The flight termination system now armed.
We should get the final go for launch from SpaceX launch director Mark
Dragon,
Surtees.
SpaceX. Godspeed. Go for launch.
SpaceX Dragon, go for launch.
SpaceX
T-minus
reports
30
go.
seconds.
Crew reports go. 30 seconds until liftoff.
T-minus 15. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Engines full power. And liftoff. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Vehicle is pitching downrange. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
We're now at T plus 35 seconds into the 5th rotational crew mission on board Dragon and Falcon 9. Coming up in just a few seconds, we'll hear the call out for Stage 1 throttle down.
Stage 1 throttle down.
Falcon 9 engines throttling down to help pass through the period of maximum dynamic pressure. This period is known as max Q, and once the vehicle... There we just heard that the vehicle is now traveling faster than the speed of sound. Once through max Q, we'll throttle those Merlin engines back up.
Max Q. Stage 1 throttle up. Stage 1 throttle.
Stage 1 Bravo.
Copy 1 Bravo.
That call out for 1 Bravo means we're in the second and final abort mode for the first stage, continuing to get good performance. The crew is already pulling over 2 Gs. And next up is going to be a couple of events in rapid succession. First will be engine chill on the second stage and back engine. And there you heard that call out. And then we'll have MECO, or main engine cutoff, where the 9 engines igniting will cut off in preparation for second stage separation. Then we'll see the single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage ignite and continue to carry the Crew 5 astronauts to orbit.
Just like we did on first stage, that MVAC chill is intended to help pre-chill the hardware prior to the full flow of that densified liquid oxygen.
Stage 1 throttle down.
At this point in time, those 9 Merlin engines are beginning to throttle down in preparation for MECO, or main engine cutoff.
Standing by for MECO.
And MECO.
Stage 2 Alpha.
And stage separation confirmed. Copy 2 Alpha.
There we should see that second engine begin to ignite now. And obviously confirmed by the loud cheer behind us here at Mission Control Hawthorne.
And we're also in 2 Alpha for the aborts if needed. Again, second stage is lit and continuing to carry the Crew 5 astronauts into orbit.
We're now getting a view of the first stage after that stage separation. The second stage still being illuminated by that single Merlin vacuum engine, and that's on the right-hand side of your screen. First stage on the left-hand side of your screen making its way back to Earth. We will be attempting to land it on our drone ship, which today we are using Just Read the Instructions.
Acquisition signal, Bermuda.
And we did hear that acquisition of the ground station in Bermuda. The first stage is continuing to make its way back to Earth, and the second stage is going to continue.
SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Another good call, trajectory nominal.
Dragon copy.
Confirmation there from Commander Nicole Mann. You can also sort of see the Space Coast there in the background of the first stage on the left-hand side of your screen. It also looks like you can actually see the thrust plume created by the first stage as it's now rotating just out of screen.
Second stage is going to continue firing until a little over 8 minutes into the flight, really doing the heavy lifting now, getting the crew into orbit.
Everything continues to look nominal on both first and second stages. as I mentioned before. The first stage will be making a landing on one of our drone ships, which is currently parked a couple hundred miles off the coast of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean. So we can see now that
SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Good confirmation there that we have good trajectory.
The second stage now traveling over 5,400 miles per hour. Crew is pulling a little more than 1G right now. That's going to continue to ramp up, peaking just before we get to second stage cutoff here in just a few minutes from now.
First stage will be performing two separate burns, a re-entry burn where we reignite three of the Merlin M1D engines on the first stage. We ignite the center engine and two radial engines to help slow it down as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. And then the second final burn, and that will be the landing burn on our drone ship.
And the single MVAC engine that you see.
Trajectory nominal.
The single MVAC engine that you see on the right of your screen is continuing to fire. We did hear another call out that trajectory is nominal. Crew heading in the direction that they are supposed to be. This single engine can produce over 220,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of space, now over 200 kilometers in altitude. We will start to hit events now in a rapid succession as the first stage continues to make its way back to Earth and the second stage continues its burn. Just a couple minutes left in that burn.
For those of you just joining us, just over 6.5 minutes ago, our 4 Crew 5 astronauts launched from Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and they are now making their way into orbit on the second stage inside Crew Dragon.
Trajectory nominal.
Which we're hearing that the trajectory on that is nominal.
Dragon copy.
They are safe inside Dragon Endurance, whereas the first stage on the left-hand side of your screen is making its way back to Earth. We are coming up to the re-entry burn, which, as I said before, we ignite 3 of the 9 Merlin engines to help slow the booster down as it re-enters the dense part of the Earth's atmosphere. As the entry burn completes, we'll be in the final...
Stage 1, entry burn startup.
So there we heard the call out. You can there see it on your screen that that entry burn has been initiated.
And as that entry burn completes, we'll be in the final different abort phases here shortly, which essentially correspond to areas along the very northeastern seaboard of the U.S.
Stage 1, entry burn shut down.
Great news, that entry burn was shut down, and then those last all the way across the Atlantic off the coast of Scotland for those abort zones.
Everything continues to look nominal for both the first and second stages.
And the crew with the second stage still attached is now traveling over 13,000 miles per hour.
We're about 10 seconds away from SECO 1.
Copy, Shannon.
Shannon,
Stage 1, transonic.
That call out for Shannon, Ireland, indicative of our final abort zone. After this, we'll see second stage shut off, and we'll be listening for confirmation of a good orbit, which tells us the crew and Dragon are exactly where they need to be.
And there we had confirmation that the MVAC
1 landing burn
has shut down simultaneously. The entry...
Dragon SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
And you heard that call for a good insertion. We will coast for a few minutes.
There we can see the drone ship coming into view as Falcon 9 attempts.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
You can see those landing legs have now deployed. And as you can see on your screen, and you can hear by the clapping and cheering behind me, Falcon 9 has landed on our drone ship, just through the instructions, parked off the coast of Florida.
And again, that second stage separation will be coming up just a couple of minutes now. We do coast for a few minutes after second engine cutoff to allow any rates or motion to dampen out and settle. And looks like we're going to get a view of the second stage as it separates here shortly. We did hear that the crew has been successfully inserted into a good orbit. Again, the crew is still attached to the second stage.
We are expecting stage separation to occur in just over a minute from now, about 1 minute and 8 seconds. And that's when when the second stage will separate from the Dragon trunk. The Dragon trunk is the part of hardware where we are able to house the cargo that is able to be exposed to the vacuum of space, as well as the solar panels which help power Dragon while it is on orbit. Again, that stage separation is now coming up in about 30 seconds. After stage separation, we will have nose cone deployment. Now that Dragon is in the vacuum of space, we will be able to open the nose cone and expose that forward hatch, which is what is utilized to dock autonomously with the International Space Station.
And that nose cone does stay closed for the flight uphill to help protect all of the guidance, navigation, and control sensors. We are standing by for second stage separation. And there is separation.
Dragon separation confirmed.
And Dragon, this is your launch director.
Dragon captain is on.
Dragon, this is your launch director on Dragon. On behalf of the entire launch and recovery team, it was an honor and a pleasure to be a part of this mission with you. And while October 3rd may belong to the main girls, October 5th will forever belong to Crew 5. Godspeed, Endurance. Cheers.
Awesome. Thank you so much to the Falcon team. Woo! That was a smooth ride uphill. You got 3 rookies that are pretty happy to be floating in space right now, and 1 veteran astronaut who's pretty happy to be back as well. Let's see what you got to say, Koichi.
Falcon team, it was a smooth ride, and I see all the 3 happy faces here back in 0G, and I appreciate all the help to give us a smooth ride and training, and thank you so much. ジャックさんの支援隊の皆さん、非常にスムーズな打ち上げでした、打ち上げご支援していただいた皆さん、応援に駆けつけてくださった皆さん、ありがとうございました。この調子でチームワークを持って頑張ります。Thank you for your support. Anya.
Thank you, Falcon 9 and fellow agencies, to Roscosmos, NASA, and JAXA, and SpaceX exactly for giving us that opportunity. We're so glad to do it together. And thank you for everybody, for all people who with us. Спасибо большое всем агентствам Роскосмос, НАСА, JAXA и, естественно, SpaceX за предоставленную нам возможность. Мы рады всем экипажам делать то, что мы сейчас делаем. И большое спасибо всем людям, кто сейчас с нами.
Really nice words there from the Crew 5 crew, as well as...
And Dragon Falcon 9C, thanks for the words. Had a great ride. Have a good mission. We'll see you later.
So there you go. That was awesome. This is always awesome. And they'll get there sometime tomorrow. But it's always, for me, it's always nerve-wracking. Every launch, knowing that there's people on board. And that's what's, I really cannot wait till the Artemis 1 eventually launches, probably now in November. Even though it'll be unmanned or without a crew. But when that mission happens eventually, going back to the moon, can you imagine? I mean, that's going to be incredible when they have a crew going back to the moon. So that is, I can't wait to see that. But this is always special. And it's also great to see, the community of nations coming together to launch. You have Americans on there, first Native American woman on there. You have the Russian cosmonaut, and you also have the Japanese astronaut. So it's good to see that. And some things we can still come together on. Because this is really for the betterment of humanity as a whole. So it's good to see that still exists. Though very fragile, but it's still holding together somewhat. But always great to see this. Anyway, Amanda, have a great show tonight with iDetective, as always. I'll keep you posted on the other thing that's going on that you're aware of. Everything seems like it's on board and we're ready to go and to relaunch. I hate to say that, but... So everyone, have a great rest of your afternoon. Godspeed to the crew heading to ISS. And I'll see everybody at some point, maybe later on today. So, again, great to see the success of the launch, and hopefully everything will work out fine from here on out, which it should. The launch is always the one that makes me very nervous. Until I see it getting to where the position is now and it's headed to the ISS. I mean, it's nerve-wracking. But again, everybody have a great day. Be well.